No one questioned why the queen of the undead never smiled. They feared her too much. Every kingdom whispered the same story. Queen Lyra could command 10,000 dead with a single breath. Entire armies fell silent when her silver eyes opened. Flowers withered beneath her footsteps. Even the strongest alpha warriors lowered their heads when she entered a room. They believed she had no heart. They were wrong, because every night, when the palace slept, I heard her crying. My name is Aria. I am an Omega. I am 22 years old. And I am the only woman alive who knows that the queen everyone feared was breaking apart in silence. It all began with a marriage no one expected. 5 kingdoms had united against the undead empire. Their demand was simple. The queen must surrender her throne, or prepare for war. Instead, Lyra shocked the world. She announced she would take a wife. Not an alpha queen from another kingdom. Not a noble warrior. Not a princess. She chose me, an ordinary Omega librarian from a forgotten border village. The kingdoms laughed. The nobles protested. The priests declared the marriage cursed. Even my own village believed I had been chosen as a sacrifice. Perhaps they were right. When the black carriage arrived, every horse was a skeleton covered in silver armor. The coachman had empty eye sockets burning with blue flames. No one dared look directly at him. My mother hugged me with shaking hands. You do not have to go. I smiled, even though my own hands trembled. If refusing means war, then thousands will die. She cried as she kissed my forehead. I climbed into the carriage. The doors closed. The journey to the Undead Palace began. For 3 days we crossed lands where nothing grew. White trees reached toward gray skies. Silent rivers reflected stars even during daylight.
No birds sang. No wolves howled.
Only silence. When the palace finally appeared, I forgot how to breathe. It was carved from black crystal that reached into the clouds. Thousands of undead soldiers stood perfectly still outside its gates. Every one of them turned to watch me, not moving, not blinking, watching. The massive doors opened. Inside stood the woman who ruled them all. Queen Lyra. She was taller than I expected. Her long silver hair flowed like moonlight. Her black dress shimmered with ancient runes. Small ivory horns curved gently from her temples. Her beauty was almost painful, but it was her eyes that held me.
Cold.
Lonely. Endlessly tired. She walked toward me. Every noble in the throne room held their breath. She stopped only inches away. You are Aria.
Her voice was calm.
Almost gentle. Yes. You are frightened. A little. A faint smile touched her lips. That is honest. She turned toward the gathered court. This marriage begins today. One noble stepped forward. An alpha duchess covered in crimson armor. Your Majesty. Lyra looked at her. The duchess immediately dropped to one knee. This Omega cannot stand beside you. She is weak. She has no noble blood. Silence filled the hall. Then Lyra spoke. My wife will never kneel before anyone. The duchess froze. Including me. Lyra reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. Not painfully cold. Just lonely. She lifted my hand before the entire court. Anyone who insults her. Blue fire appeared in every torch. The undead soldiers outside slammed their weapons against the ground. The palace shook. Insults their queen. No one spoke again. The ceremony lasted only minutes. No celebration followed. No music.
No feast.
Only endless silence. That night servants guided me toward the royal chambers.
Everyone avoided looking at me, as though they pitied me.
The room itself was beautiful. Large windows overlooked the endless dark forests. Moonlight spilled across polished stone floors. A fire burned without wood. I stood awkwardly near the bed, waiting. The door opened. Lyra entered quietly. She removed her crown first, then her gloves. She looked exhausted. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she sighed. You may sleep peacefully. I blinked. Aren't we? She understood immediately.
No.
Her answer was soft. I will never force affection. Relief spread through me. She noticed. I frightened you. I feared what I did not know. She nodded once. Understandable. She walked toward the balcony. I will remain here tonight. You do not have to. I prefer the night air. She stood there for hours, watching the moon, not moving, not speaking. Eventually I fell asleep. Sometime after midnight, I woke unexpectedly. A quiet sound drifted through the room. At first I thought it was rain. Then I realized someone was crying. I quietly left the bed. The balcony doors stood slightly open. Outside, beneath the silver moon, Queen Lyra covered her face with trembling hands. She was crying so quietly that the world itself seemed to be protecting her secret. Then she whispered words that froze my heart. I cannot lose another wife. The moment those words left her lips, an ancient voice echoed through the darkness. You have found her again, my queen. Lyra's face turned completely white. She slowly turned toward the shadows. Someone had been watching us. The voice came from the darkness beyond the balcony. A woman stepped into the moonlight. She looked no older than 30. Her white robes shimmered with faint golden symbols. Unlike everyone else in the palace, she was alive. Her heartbeat echoed softly in the silent night. Lyra quickly wiped away every trace of her tears. The queen of the undead returned in an instant.
Cold. Calm.
Untouchable. Elder Mira, Lyra said quietly. You should not be here. The woman smiled sadly. I could say the same. Her eyes drifted toward me. So this is her. I froze. Lyra stepped between us without hesitation. Leave. Mira lowered her head respectfully. As you wish, my queen. She disappeared into the shadows as silently as she had arrived. For several long moments, neither Lyra nor I spoke. Finally, she turned toward me. You should be asleep. I heard you. I know. I hesitated. I was not trying to spy. I know. She walked past me into the room. I apologize. For what? You should never have seen that. She closed the balcony doors. The queen the world fears cannot be seen crying. I quietly asked the question that had been burning inside me. What did she mean? Lyra looked away. I do not wish to speak of it. You said you cannot lose another wife. Silence. The fire crackled softly. Finally, she answered. I have been married before. My chest tightened. I am sorry. You should not be. She sat beside the window. It happened many centuries ago. Centuries. I remembered the stories. The queen of the undead had ruled longer than any living monarch. No one knew exactly how old she was. Some believed she was immortal. Others believed she was already dead. She stared at the moon. She was kind. A faint smile appeared. She laughed often. Her fingers tightened. I failed to protect her. The smile disappeared. I buried her myself. The room became painfully quiet. I wanted to ask more. Instead, I simply sat beside her. Neither of us spoke. Sometimes silence was kinder than questions. After a long while, she stood. You should rest. She left before I could answer. The next morning, the palace came alive. Not with music. Not with laughter. Only duty. Undead servants prepared breakfast. Undead guards patrolled endless halls. Everything moved with perfect discipline. Nothing felt truly alive. As I wandered through the palace, many nobles watched me. Most looked confused. Some looked angry. One looked dangerous. The crimson-armored duchess from the wedding blocked my path. Her name, I soon learned, was Selene. She was one of Lyra's strongest alpha commanders. So, she folded her arms. The little Omega survived her first night. I did. I expected the queen would grow bored already. I answered politely. The queen has been nothing but respectful. Selene laughed. You know nothing. Before I could respond, another voice interrupted. Commander. Selene immediately straightened. Lyra's approached calmly. Every servant bowed. Selene bowed deepest. My queen, you were speaking with my wife. Only welcoming her. Lyra looked at her for several silent seconds. Then she spoke. I heard every word. Selene's confidence vanished. My queen, if you dislike this marriage, Lyra's voice remained perfectly calm. You may resign your command. Shock spread across the hallway. Even the undead soldiers seemed frozen. Celine immediately knelt. I would never abandon you. I know. Then why? Because loyalty without respect has no value. Celine lowered her head. I understand. You will apologize. She turned toward me. I apologize. It sounded genuine. At least partly. Lyra nodded once. Good. She reached for my hand.
Come.
She led me through the palace gardens. Unlike the lands outside, these gardens were beautiful. White roses covered every path. Silver butterflies floated through glowing flowers. Crystal fountains reflected the morning sun. It is beautiful. They bloom only because of you. I looked at her. What? The flowers. She touched one gently. They have not bloomed for many years. I laughed softly. I think you're giving me too much credit. I do not. She looked almost surprised herself. As long as you are here. Another flower opened. Then another. The entire garden slowly awakened. I stared in disbelief.
How?
I do not know. She looked at the blooming roses. Magic often follows hope.
Hope.
No one had ever used that word while speaking about the undead queen.
For the first time I noticed something.
Whenever she looked at me, the coldness in her silver eyes faded. Only slightly, but enough to notice. As evening approached, we shared dinner alone. She asked about my village, my favorite books, the foods I enjoyed, the songs my mother used to sing. No one had ever asked me so many gentle questions. By the time the candles burned low, I realized something impossible. I no longer feared her. Later that night, I passed an old hallway lined with ancient paintings. One portrait stopped me completely. It showed Lyra standing beside another woman. An Omega. She looked astonishingly familiar. The same brown hair, the same eyes, the same smile. She looked exactly like me. A whisper behind me made my blood run cold. She was your first life. I turned. Elder Mira stood in the shadows. You are not merely similar. She stepped closer. You are the very soul the queen has mourned for 500 years. I stared at Elder Mira, certain I had misheard her. My first life. Mira nodded slowly. Yes. I shook my head. That is impossible. Most people remember nothing after death. I have never been here before. Your memories did not survive. She looked toward the portrait, but your soul did. I looked back at the painting. The woman beside Lyra smiled with a warmth that made my chest ache. She truly looked like me, not just similar. The same eyes, the same dimples, even the tiny scar above her left eyebrow. A scar I also carried. My hands began to shake. Who was she? Her name was Elian. Myra's expression softened. She was an Omega. What happened to her? Mira closed her eyes. She died protecting the queen. Before I could ask another question, footsteps echoed through the hallway. Lyra. Mira immediately stepped away. My queen. Lyra glanced between us. What were you discussing? Mira smiled politely. The palace history. Lyra looked at me. Is that true? I hesitated. For just a second. Yes. She studied my face. She knew I was hiding something. But she chose not to press me. You should rest, Aria. I nodded. That night sleep refused to come. Again and again I remembered the portrait. The woman called Elian. The impossible resemblance. The strange ache in my heart. Near dawn, I finally drifted into sleep. Then the dream began. I stood in a field of white flowers. Warm sunlight touched my face. Someone laughed behind me. I turned. Lyra. But she looked different. Younger. Her eyes were bright. Her smile was real. She wore no crown. No black robes. She ran toward me, laughing. I found you. Without thinking, I laughed too. You always do. She wrapped her arms around me. I always will. The feeling was so familiar that tears filled my eyes. Then, everything changed. The sky darkened. The flowers turned black. Blood covered the ground. Lyra screamed, not with anger, with despair. I looked down. A sword pierced my chest. My hands were covered in blood. Lyra held me as I collapsed.
No.
She was crying. No, stay with me. I tried to lift my hand, to touch her face. I am sorry.
No.
You promised. I know. I cannot live without you. You must. I refuse. The world shattered. I woke with a scream. Someone immediately rushed into the room. Lyra. She knelt beside the bed.
Aria.
I could barely breathe. She gently held my shoulders. You were dreaming. I looked into her silver eyes. Without thinking, I whispered, I remember flowers. Her expression froze. What? A field. And you were smiling. The color drained from her face. She slowly released me. That dream. She stood. What else did you see? I remembered the sword.
The blood.
Her tears. But something inside me stopped the words. I do not know. She looked relieved. Or perhaps frightened. You should forget it. Can I? If possible. She left before sunrise. I watched the closed door for a long time. She knew. She knew exactly what I had seen. Later that afternoon, the palace gates exploded open. A messenger rode into the courtyard. Alive. Bleeding. Exhausted. He collapsed before the throne. My queen. Lyra remained calm. Speak. The Northern Alliance has crossed the border. Murmurs spread across the court. Their armies number over 50,000. Another commander stepped forward. They dare invade us? The messenger swallowed hard. They claim the queen has become weak. His eyes briefly met mine. They believe marrying an Omega has distracted your majesty. The hall erupted. Commanders shouted. Weapons were drawn. Celine stepped forward. Give the order. Blue fire flickered in Lyra's eyes.
No.
Every voice stopped. We will not strike first. My queen, Celine protested. They are already marching. I know. Then why wait? Lyra looked toward the great window. Because someone wants this war. The room fell silent again. She continued. I intend to discover who. That evening she left with her generals to inspect the border. For the first time since arriving, I remained alone. The palace felt emptier than ever. As I wandered through the royal library, I noticed a hidden staircase behind an old bookshelf. Curiosity overcame caution. I descended. The air grew colder. The steps ended before a massive iron door. It stood slightly open. Inside was a secret chamber. Hundreds of candles burned without melting. Ancient books covered every wall. At the center of the room rested a single crystal coffin. My heart began pounding. Inside the crystal lay a sleeping Omega. She looked peaceful, beautiful, untouched by time. She looked exactly like me. A whisper escaped my lips. Elian. Then I noticed the inscription carved into the crystal. It read, Until your soul returns, I shall wait, even if eternity hates me for it.
Signed.
Lyra. Behind me, the heavy door slowly closed by itself, and someone locked it from the outside. The sound of the lock echoed through the hidden chamber. My heart slammed against my ribs. Hello. I hurried to the iron door and pulled with all my strength. It did not move. I knocked harder. Is someone there? Only silence answered. The chamber felt strangely peaceful. Hundreds of candles burned, without smoke. The crystal coffin reflected their light like frozen water. Slowly, I turned back toward it. The woman inside looked as though she were sleeping. Every detail matched my own face, even the tiny birthmark beneath her left ear. I touched my own neck without thinking. The same mark. A chill ran through my body. This cannot be real. I stepped closer. The crystal was perfectly clear. She wore a simple white dress instead of royal clothing. A silver ring rested on her finger. Its design matched the ring Lyra wore every day beneath her black glove. Not a queen's ring. A wedding ring. My eyes drifted to the inscription again. Until your soul returns, I shall wait, even if eternity hates me for it. How long had she waited? 500 years. The number felt impossible. I looked around the chamber. Ancient books filled every shelf. One book rested open on a stone table, as though someone had been reading it recently. Curiosity overcame caution. I approached. The pages were written in beautiful handwriting. Not a history book. A journal. The first line caught my breath. Today, Elian laughed because I burned breakfast again. She says the queen who terrifies armies cannot defeat a frying pan. I blinked. I read another entry. She braided flowers into my hair before the council meeting. The ministers nearly fainted. She laughed for an hour afterward. Another page. She fell asleep while reading beside me. I delayed an entire war council because I did not wish to wake her. Celine still complains about it. A small smile appeared on my face. This Lyra was nothing like the queen the world knew. She sounded
happy, alive.
I turned another page. The handwriting became uneven. The healers cannot stop the poison. Another page. She tells me she is not afraid. She lies poorly. Another. I would trade this kingdom for one more sunrise with her. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. The final written page was stained. Not with ink. With dried tears. She died in my arms today. The gods took the only light my endless life ever knew. I swear I will wait until the stars themselves fade. If her soul returns, I will find her again, even if it takes eternity. The journal slipped from my trembling hands. Suddenly I understood. The crying, the loneliness, the cold walls around her heart. She had never truly recovered. 500 years had passed, yet every wound remained open. A soft click echoed behind me. I turned. The iron door slowly opened. Lyra stood there. She looked at the journal on the floor, then at the crystal coffin. Her expression became unreadable. You found this place. I did. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, she walked inside. She stood beside the coffin. Her fingers gently rested on the crystal. I never intended for you to see this. Why? Because it is the weakest part of me. I looked at her. You are not weak. Her lips curved into a sad smile. I spent centuries convincing the world otherwise. She looked down at Elian's sleeping face. I failed her. You loved her. I should have saved her. You tried. It was not enough. Silence settled between us. Then I asked the question that had haunted me since meeting Mira. Do you believe I am her? Lyra closed her eyes. I do not know. You chose me. I chose you because when I first saw you, my heart recognized something my mind could not explain. She looked directly into my eyes. But you are Aria. She stepped closer. I will never ask you to become someone else. Those words struck me harder than I expected. She had waited centuries. Yet she refused to force me into another woman's place. I appreciate that. She nodded. I only ask one thing. What is it? If memories return. She hesitated. Tell me the truth. I will. She gave a small smile. The first genuine one I had seen. Then the palace alarm rang. Once.
Twice.
3 times. Every candle in the chamber flickered. An undead soldier appeared at the doorway and knelt. My queen. What happened? The northern fortress has fallen. Lyra's face hardened instantly.
Impossible.
The gates were opened from inside. The soldier lowered his head. There is a traitor among the royal court. The room became deathly still. Then the soldier added words that froze my blood. The witnesses all named the same person. Lyra's silver eyes narrowed.
Who?
The soldier swallowed. They claim it was your wife. Every gaze in the chamber turned toward me. The words echoed through the chamber. They claim it was your wife. For a long moment, no one moved. No one breathed. I stared at the undead soldier. There must be some mistake. The soldier kept his head lowered. The surviving guards all gave the same testimony. I have never even been to the northern fortress. I know only what was reported. Lyra remained perfectly still. Her face revealed nothing. Then she spoke. Leave us. The soldier obeyed immediately. As the door closed, silence returned. I looked at Lyra. You do not believe them. She answered without hesitation. I do not. Relief rushed through me. You are not even asking if I am innocent. I already know.
How?
She met my eyes. Because while the fortress was falling, you were here. She glanced at the open journal. With me. I released a breath I had not realized I was holding. But someone wanted them to accuse me. Yes. And they wanted the accusation to reach you. Yes. She began walking toward the exit. They are testing me. I followed her through the palace corridors. By the time we reached the throne room, every commander had gathered. Celine stood at the front. Her expression was grim. My queen. You have heard the report. I have. Several nobles immediately began speaking. The witnesses cannot all be lying. The Omega arrived only days ago. The timing is suspicious. Another noble stepped forward. We request permission to place the Queen's wife under guard until the investigation is complete. The room fell silent. Everyone waited for Lyra's answer. She slowly climbed the steps to her throne. Then she turned to face the court. My answer is no. The noble frowned. But, Your Majesty. I said no. The safety of the kingdom. The safety of this kingdom is my responsibility. Her silver eyes swept across the room. My wife will not be imprisoned. Another commander spoke. What if she truly is involved? Lyra's voice became colder. Then I will deal with it myself. No one argued further. The meeting ended quickly. As everyone left, I noticed Celine lingering behind. She approached after the others disappeared. My queen. What is it? I do not believe Lady Aria is guilty. I looked at her in surprise. She sighed. I know soldiers. She folded her arms. The witnesses repeated the same words. Exactly the same? Lyra nodded slightly, as though they had memorized a script. Yes. Celine looked troubled. Someone prepared them. Lyra turned toward the large map covering the wall. The question is why? Before anyone could answer, a guard hurried inside. My queen. What now? We captured one of the surviving fortress soldiers. Bring him. Moments later, a young alpha was escorted into the hall. He looked terrified. The moment he saw Lyra, he fell to his knees.
Please.
I only repeated what they told me. Lyra descended the steps.
Who?
The soldier shook violently. I never saw their faces. What did they tell you? They said if anyone asked, I must accuse Lady Aria. And if you refused, they would kill my family. The room became silent. Lyra knelt before him. You have nothing to fear now. Tears streamed down his face. They wore silver masks. My heartbeat quickened. Silver masks, the same color as the mysterious symbols carved throughout the palace. The soldier continued. One of them said something strange. What did he say? He said. The young alpha swallowed hard. The queen must lose her wife again. The hall fell completely silent. My blood turned cold. Again. Not lose her wife. Lose her wife again. Whoever planned this knew about Elian. Knowledge that should have been impossible. Lyra slowly stood. Her face remained calm. But I felt the air around her grow colder. The torches turned blue. The stone floor cracked beneath her feet. Celine quietly whispered. My queen. Lyra took one slow breath. They are no longer attacking my kingdom. She looked toward the dark horizon beyond the palace windows. They are attacking my heart. No one dared speak. Hours later, after the council ended, I found Lyra standing alone in the palace garden. The white roses swayed gently beneath the moonlight. You knew they would come after me. She nodded. I hoped I was wrong. Who are they? I do not know. You have ruled for centuries. I have made many enemies. I stood beside her. Can I ask something? You may. If I really am Elian's soul. She looked at me carefully. Would that make you love me? She answered immediately. I already love you. My heart stopped. She continued before I could respond. But not because of who you might have been. She gently touched one blooming rose. I love the woman who worries about strangers. The woman who thanks servants. The woman who makes dead gardens bloom. She smiled softly. I love Aria. Before I could find the courage to answer, a deafening explosion shook the palace. The northern tower erupted in flames. A scream echoed through the night. Then a voice carried across the burning courtyard. "My queen, we have found the body of Elder Mira." The words struck like lightning. "We have found the body of Elder Mira." Lyra was already moving before the messenger finished speaking. I ran after her through the palace corridors. Guards rushed in every direction. Smoke drifted through shattered windows. The northern tower burned with dark blue flames. When we reached the courtyard, dozens of soldiers had formed a circle. No one spoke. At the center lay Elder Mira. She was still, too still. Her white robes were stained with blood. Lyra knelt beside her. She gently placed 2 fingers against Myra's neck. Nothing. For the first time since I had met her, I saw panic flash across Lyra's face. "Healer." Several healers hurried forward. One examined Mira carefully. After a long silence, he lowered his head. "My queen, there is nothing we can do." The courtyard fell silent. Mira was gone. A small scroll rested in her hand. Her fingers were wrapped around it so tightly that even in death they refused to let go. Lyra carefully removed it. The seal had already been broken. She opened the parchment. As she read, the color slowly drained from her face. "What is it?" I asked. She handed the scroll to me. The handwriting was unmistakably Myra's. "My queen, if you are reading this, I have already failed. The enemy is not outside your walls. They have walked beside you for years. Trust the one whose heart chose you, not the one whose loyalty was spoken aloud." I looked up. "There is more." The final lines were written in shaking letters. "When the crimson moon rises, the first crown will awaken. Only the love freely chosen can end the curse. Do not repeat the mistake of 500 years ago." The message ended there. No name.
No explanation.
Only a final drop of dry blood. Celine stepped closer. "The first crown." Her voice was barely above a whisper. I thought it was only a legend. I looked between them. "What is the first crown?" Lyra remained silent. Celine answered instead. "It was the crown worn by the first ruler of the undead. They say it was created with forbidden magic. And it grants unimaginable power." She hesitated. "But every queen who wore it eventually lost herself." I looked at Lyra. "You wear a crown." She slowly removed the black crown from her head. "This is only a symbol." She held it in her hands. "The first crown disappeared centuries ago." Myra's warning echoed in my mind. The first crown will awaken. Someone was searching for it. Or perhaps they had already found it. The funeral was held before sunrise. The palace gathered in complete silence. No music.
No speeches.
Only hundreds of candles surrounding Myra's resting place. Lyra placed a single white rose upon her coffin. "You guided me longer than anyone." Her voice remained calm, but her eyes carried grief that words could not hide. After the ceremony, Celine requested a private audience. Only Lyra, Celine, and I remained in the strategy chamber. Celine spread several maps across the table. "We have another problem." She pointed towards small red markings. "Our supply routes have been attacked." "By the Northern Alliance?" Lyra asked. Celine shook her head. "No survivors reported enemy banners." "Then who?" "They described masked warriors. Silver masks." I felt my stomach tighten. "The same group again." Celine nodded. "They never steal supplies. They destroy them. They never occupy territory. They vanish." Lyra studied the map carefully. "They are forcing us into war." "Yes. But why?" No one answered. A young scout burst into the room. "My queen, what happened?" "We captured one of the masked attackers." Lyra stood immediately. "Take me to him." The prisoner was locked beneath the palace. His silver mask had been removed. He looked barely older than me. His wrists were chained, yet he smiled. Lyra stood before him. "Who sent you?" The prisoner laughed. "You already know." I asked a question.
The past.
His eyes shifted toward me. "And the future." My skin crawled. What do you want? He looked directly at Lyra. We want you to suffer. You have failed. He smiled wider. Have we? His gaze returned to me. Tell me. Has she shown you the truth? I frowned. What truth? The night your first life ended. Lyra's voice became sharp. Enough. The prisoner laughed again. She still hides it. Even now. He leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. You think Elian died protecting the queen? He smiled. That is not what happened. My heart skipped. What do you mean? The prisoner's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Ask your wife. He laughed one final time. Ask her who truly killed Elian. The chains suddenly glowed with black light. Before anyone could react, his body turned to ash. He crumbled to the floor.
Dead. No poison. No weapon.
Just ash. The prison fell silent. I slowly turned toward Lyra. She had not moved. Her face was completely pale, and for the first time, she could not meet my eyes. The prison felt colder than the winter outside. Ash drifted across the stone floor where the masked prisoner had been only moments before. No one spoke. I looked at Lyra. She still would not meet my eyes. The silence hurt more than any answer. Finally, I whispered, Is it true? Her fingers slowly closed into fists. Not in the way he wanted you to believe. Then tell me. She remained silent. Please. Celine quietly stepped back. My queen. Lyra nodded once. Leave us. The guards and Celine withdrew, without a word. The heavy prison door closed. Only the two of us remained. Lyra stared at the empty chains. I promised myself. Her voice was barely audible. I would never tell you this. You also asked me to tell you the truth if my memories returned. She closed her eyes. You are right. For several moments, she simply stood there. Then she began. 500 years ago, our kingdom was not feared. I listened without interrupting. It was alive. There were children in the streets. There were markets. Music. Festivals. She smiled faintly. Elian loved festivals. The smile disappeared. Then the plague came. I frowned. A plague. It killed everything. No healer could stop it. No priest could slow it. Entire cities disappeared. She looked toward the ceiling as though seeing another time. I watched thousands die. And Elian became sick. My chest tightened. The poison. It was not poison. It was the plague. Why did everyone say poison? Because I allowed them to. You lied. I hid the truth. Why? Because the plague was created. The words echoed through the prison. Created? Yes. It was never natural. Someone had unleashed it. On purpose. Lyra continued. I searched for a cure. I failed. Every day she became weaker. Her voice trembled. She smiled anyway. I could almost picture it. Elian comforting the woman who was trying to save her. Then I found the first crown. The forbidden crown. She nodded. The legends were true. It offered me one choice. What choice? It promised to save everyone. I felt hope. Then I saw her expression. And the price. My humanity. Silence filled the prison. I accepted. Blue light slowly flickered around her fingers. The crown ended the plague. But it transformed me. The dead answered my voice. My body stopped aging. My heart, she looked at her own hands, became colder every year. I swallowed. What about Elian? A tear escaped despite her efforts. I was too late. My breath caught. The plague had already reached her heart. You saved everyone else. I could not save the only person who mattered. She turned away. I held her while she died. You did not kill her.
No.
But I killed the woman she loved. I frowned. I do not understand. She finally looked at me. When I wore the first crown, my emotions began disappearing. I became distant, cold, unrecognizable. She watched me disappear before her eyes. Her voice broke. The last thing she said to me was, she could barely continue. I miss your smile. The prison was silent except for her breathing. I never smiled again. My own eyes filled with tears. The prisoner had twisted the truth. Lyra had not murdered Elian. She blamed herself for changing, for surviving, for becoming someone her wife no longer recognized. You carried this alone. For 5 centuries. She nodded once. I deserved it.
No.
I made the choice. To save millions. And lost yourself. She laughed bitterly. A queen should not ask for pity. I am not offering pity. I stepped closer. I am offering understanding. She looked at me as though she had forgotten such a thing existed. You have punished yourself long enough. She shook her head. You do not know everything. What else? She hesitated. The first crown never disappeared. Every instinct inside me screamed. Where is it? She slowly placed a hand over her chest. It has been sealed inside me. The words hit me like ice. I became its prison. If the seal breaks. She looked directly into my eyes. I will become the very monster the world believes I already am. Before I could answer, a terrible roar shook the entire palace. The stone walls trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. A guard burst into the prison, breathing hard. My queen. What happened? The royal vault. The guard's face was white with fear. It has been breached. What was taken? The guard swallowed. Nothing. Lyra frowned. Then why sound the alarm? Because. His voice trembled. The seal protecting the first crown. He looked directly at Lyra. It has begun to crack. The palace shook again. A deep crack echoed beneath the stone floors. Every undead soldier in the halls suddenly stopped moving. Blue light flickered inside their empty eyes. For one terrifying moment, none of them obeyed their commands. Then the light faded. The soldiers moved again. Lyra closed her eyes. The seal is weakening. Celine rushed into the prison. My queen. I felt it. Lyra nodded. So did I. Celine looked toward me. We have evacuated the servants. What about the nobles? I asked. They have gathered in the eastern hall. Another tremor shook the palace. The torches burst into blue flames. A cold wind swept through every corridor. Lyra turned to Celine. Prepare the army. You believe they are coming tonight? They have been waiting for this moment. As if answering her words, a horn echoed across the dark valley. Then another. Then dozens more. A scout ran into the chamber. The masked army has surrounded the palace. Celine immediately reached for her sword. Numbers? More than 20,000. I stared in disbelief. Where did such a force come from? No banners. No kingdom. They appeared from the forests. Lyra remained calm. They were never part of the Northern Alliance. They only used the war as a distraction. We climbed to the highest balcony, overlooking the battlefield. Thousands of silver-masked warriors surrounded the palace. Each carried black banners marked with a crimson crown. Above them, the moon slowly changed color. From silver to deep red, Myra's warning echoed through my mind. When the crimson moon rises, the first crown will awaken. It is beginning, Lyra whispered. A figure rode forward from the enemy lines. She wore black armor. A silver mask covered half her face. Long dark hair flowed behind her. When she removed the mask, every breath around me stopped. She looked almost identical to Lyra. Only her eyes were different. Golden instead of silver. Celine's voice became filled with hatred. No. It cannot be. I looked at her. Who is she? Celine answered without taking her eyes off the battlefield. Queen Lyra. Lyra's younger sister. My heart skipped. You have a sister? Lyra's expression hardened. I had one. Lyra smiled from across the battlefield. Her voice carried through the night with unnatural clarity. Dear sister. It has been far too long. Lyra stepped onto the balcony edge. You should have stayed buried. Lyra laughed. You tried to bury me. You failed. I looked between them. No one had ever mentioned another queen. Lyra continued. 500 years. You ruled while I waited. You mourned while I planned. Lyra's silver eyes glowed brighter. What do you want? Lyra spread her arms. What has always belonged to me? The first crown. It rejected you. It imprisoned you. It was always meant for me. The air around the palace darkened. The undead army behind Lyra slowly turned toward the balcony. Not toward the enemy.
Toward their queen.
Blue light flashed wildly inside their eyes. Celine whispered, "They are losing control." Lyra's face paled.
The seal.
She pressed a hand against her chest. Black markings spread beneath her skin. I grabbed her arm. "Lyra." She smiled weakly. "It is happening.
No.
The crown is awakening." Lyra laughed with delight. "Yes. Let it consume you. You have resisted for centuries. You cannot resist forever." She raised one hand. Every masked warrior lifted their weapons. "Kill everyone. But leave my sister alive." I wished to watch her become a monster. The battle began. Arrows darkened the sky. Undead soldiers charged from the palace gates. Steel crashed against steel. Magic exploded across the battlefield. The night became chaos. Celine led the defense with fearless precision. She cut through wave after wave of attackers. Yet the enemy never seemed to grow fewer. I turned back toward Lyra. She had fallen to one knee. The black markings now covered both arms. Her breathing had become uneven.
Aria.
Her voice sounded distant. "You must leave." "I am not leaving you." "You must." She looked at me with pain in her eyes. "If I lose control, I will not know friend from enemy. I do not care."
Ido.
She reached up and gently touched my cheek. "You gave me something I believed I had lost forever." "What?" "Hope." Tears filled my eyes. "We can fight this together." Before she could answer, Lyra appeared on the balcony in a burst of black flames. She smiled as her golden eyes fixed on us. Too late. She pointed directly at me. "The Omega dies first." Lyra moved faster than sight. One moment she stood across the balcony. The next, her hand was wrapped around my throat. My feet left the ground. I struggled to breathe. Her golden eyes studied my face. "So, this is the woman you waited 500 years for." She smiled cruelly. I expected someone more impressive. A wave of black energy exploded between us. Lyra was thrown backward across the balcony. Lyra stood before me. Her silver eyes burned like stars. The black markings had spread across half her face. Her voice echoed with two different tones.
Do.
Not. Touch. My wife. Lyra laughed as she rose. "There she is. The queen I wanted. You are finally letting the crown awaken." Lyra attacked without another word. Their swords collided with a blast that shattered every balcony window. Magic tore through the night. Silver and black light crashed together again and again. Neither sister gained an advantage. Below us the battle raged. Celine's army held the palace gates. But barely. The masked warriors continued advancing. Every fallen enemy seemed to be replaced by two more. I wanted to help. Instead, I searched desperately for anything that could end this. Then I remembered Myra's final words. "Only the love freely chosen can end the curse." Freely chosen. Not forced. Not destined. Chosen. My eyes widened. It had never been about the crown. It had never been about reincarnation. It was about choice. Another explosion shook the balcony. Lyra stumbled backward. The black markings now covered nearly her entire body. She screamed. Not in pain. In struggle. The crown was trying to consume her. Lyra smiled triumphantly. "You cannot resist forever." She raised her sword for the final strike. I ran between them. Lyra stopped. Even Lyra stared at me. "Move." Lyra's voice was cold.
No.
"You are an Omega. I know. You cannot stop me. Maybe not. But I can make a choice." I turned toward Lyra. She was barely conscious. Her silver eyes faded beneath waves of darkness. She looked at me with fear. "Run."
No.
"I will hurt you. I know."
Please.
"I am staying." She shook her head weakly. "You do not understand." "I understand enough. I gently took both of her hands. They were ice cold. The black markings spread onto my fingers where our skin touched. Celine shouted from below. Lady Aria, get away from her. I ignored everyone. I looked only at Lyra. You once told me you loved Aria. She stared at me, not because of who I might have been, but because of who I am. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Yes. I choose you too. The words echoed across the battlefield. I am not choosing a queen. I am not choosing a legend. I am choosing the woman who cried alone. The woman who protected me. The woman who waited centuries without asking anything in return. I choose Lyra. A brilliant white light burst from our joined hands. The battlefield froze. Every soldier stopped moving. Even Lyra stepped back. The black markings covering Lyra began disappearing. The darkness retreated like smoke before the sunrise. The crown screamed, not with a human voice, with something ancient, something furious. A shadow rose from Lyra's chest. It wore the shape of a broken crown. Countless black hands reached from within it. Lyra's smile vanished.
No.
It cannot leave her. The shadow turned toward Lyra. For the first time, fear appeared in her golden eyes. You. The voice echoed like thousands speaking together. You sought to awaken me. Lyra stumbled backward. I was your chosen ruler. You desired power. The shadow reached toward her, but never love. It wrapped around Lyra. She screamed as darkness consumed her.
No.
I served you. You served yourself. With one final cry, she vanished. The shadow shattered into countless fragments of light. The crimson moon slowly returned to silver. Across the battlefield, every masked warrior collapsed unconscious. Their weapons fell harmlessly to the ground. The battle was over. Lyra collapsed into my arms. Her silver eyes had returned. The black markings were gone. She looked at me as though seeing the sunrise after endless night. You stayed. I smiled through tears. I said I would. She gently rested her forehead against mine. I have nothing left to hide. I laughed softly. Good. Because neither do I. Far below us, the palace bells began ringing. Not for war. For victory. For the first time in 5 centuries. The undead kingdom welcomed the dawn without fear. Morning sunlight spilled across the palace for what felt like the first time. The black clouds that had covered the undead kingdom for centuries slowly disappeared. The white roses in the royal gardens bloomed brighter than ever. The silence that once filled the palace was gone. For the first time, laughter echoed through its halls. The battle had ended. Queen Lyra was gone. The first crown had been destroyed. The curse that had chained Lyra for 500 years had finally broken. The undead soldiers remained, but they were different. The blue flames in their eyes had become calm. They no longer moved like puppets. Many bowed to Lyra with gratitude instead of blind obedience. Days later, representatives from every neighboring kingdom arrived at the palace. They had expected to negotiate with a terrifying queen of the undead. Instead, they found a ruler standing beside her Omega wife, with sunlight shining through open palace windows. The same nobles who once feared approaching the throne now stared in disbelief. One elderly king stepped forward. Your Majesty. Lyra nodded politely. I have come to ask. He hesitated. Has the war truly ended? Lyra looked toward me before answering. Yes. There will be no more conquest. No more revenge. We have all buried enough people. The king lowered his head with respect. Then peace begins today. One by one, every ruler agreed. The treaties were signed before sunset. For the first time in generations, every kingdom shared the same promise.
Peace.
As the palace slowly returned to normal, Celine found me in the gardens. She folded her arms, though her expression carried none of the old hostility. I owe you an apology. I smiled. You already gave me one. Not for everything. She looked toward the training grounds where soldiers practiced. I judged you because you were an Omega. And because I feared anyone replacing Elian. She shook her head. I was wrong. You never tried to replace her.
No.
I simply loved Lyra. Celine laughed quietly. Exactly. She extended her hand. Friends. I shook it. Friends. That evening, Lyra asked me to walk with her to the highest balcony. The same balcony where I had first heard her crying. The moon hung peacefully above the forests. Everything felt different. She rested her hands on the stone railing. I came here every night. I know. I thought if I cried quietly enough, no one would hear. I smiled. You underestimated palace balconies. She laughed. A real laugh.
Warm. Bright.
Completely unguarded. I stopped walking. She noticed my surprise. What? You laughed. She blinked. I did. You never laughed before. She thought for a moment. Then another smile appeared. I suppose I forgot how. You remembered. Because of you. She reached into her pocket and removed 2 silver rings. One was the ring she had worn for centuries. The other was newly crafted. She looked at the old ring for a long moment. I will always honor Elian. She gently placed the ring into a small wooden box. She gave me the strength to endure. Then she looked into my eyes. You gave me the courage to live again. She slipped the new ring onto my finger.
Aria.
I have loved you from the day you stepped out of that black carriage. Not because fate brought you to me. Not because your soul reminded me of the past. But because every day you chose kindness. You chose hope. You chose me. Tears filled my eyes. I choose you too. She placed the matching ring on her own hand. Then she kissed me beneath the silver moon. The palace bells rang softly in the distance. Not because a queen had won a war, but because 2 women had finally found peace. Years passed. The Undead Kingdom slowly became known by a new name. The Moon Kingdom. Travelers no longer arrived in fear. They came to see its white gardens, its crystal rivers, its libraries, its music. Children laughed through streets that had once been silent. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, Lyra and I visited a quiet hill covered with white flowers. There stood 2 simple memorial stones. One for Elder Mira, one for Elian. We always left fresh roses. One afternoon, as we prepared to leave, I noticed Lyra standing silently before Elian's memorial. You still miss her. I always will. I gently slipped my hand into hers. You can miss someone and still be happy. She smiled. I finally understand that. Together, we walked back toward the palace, toward our family, toward a future no curse could steal. And as the gates opened, the queen whom the world had once called the ruler of the undead smiled so brightly that even the oldest soldiers smiled back. Because the strongest magic had never been death. It had always been a heart brave enough to love again.